Welcome back to Tiny Voice Talks Book Salon. And yes, we have gone live this time. Nothing short of a miracle, really. Because last time, if you were here, you will know, well, you weren't here because basically I didn't go live well. This week, or this month, I should say, our theme is schools. And I'm really, really, really excited to have some amazing guests with us. So we have Richard O'Neill back with us. We have author and educator Jenny Pearson.
Hello.
We have educator Aditi Singh, and we have another educator, Simon Foreman. So welcome, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for your enthusiasm, people. I'm so pleased to have you all here. I really, really am. Now, Richard, I'm going to start with you because when you said you wanted this theme to be schools, I was a little perplexed. I didn't necessarily fully understand. And now you're going to explain to myself and everyone else what you meant about the theme of schools, whilst I let the cat out of the door because they're attacking the carpet. So fine.
Okay. Well, you get on with your cat and the attack carpet. But yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time in schools as an author, a storyteller, and now consultant. I spend a lot of time in schools. I spend probably more time in school than I did when I should have been in school. But that's another story. But it fascinates me how many books there are about school. Going way, way back to Tom Brown's school days, and we can go even further back. To The Scholar Gypsy, which was about a person who didn't want to go to Oxford University, sat in school, looked out the window. This is like 1700s, and watched these gypsies go by and wished he was with them and rather than be in the school. So I thought it should be a really interesting subject because, we have the archetypal Miss Honey, don't we? And then we have the really bad head teachers. So, is it representative, the children's literature or just the adult literature we have about schools? And why are we as authors? I've written at least 5 stories about school. I've written a whole load of school monologues about secondary school. Why are we so fascinated with it? That's what I'd like to know. So over to you.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts on that? Jenny, I'll come to you first of all. What are your thoughts? Why are we obsessed with schools?
Well, because I think when you're trying to connect with children as adults, you think back to the time that you're a child. And I think your school days are like the overriding memory. So it's like an easy in there because it's that one thing that everybody's got in common. We all went to different schools, of course, but there is that sort of thing where if you want to plant something else in a story and you want to root it into like real life, for example, there are so many people who do it brilliantly that tackle really big themes, but have school as a constant in the background, sort of to juxtapose like big issues and then have that constant that we can all relate to if we can't relate to that issue. I'm thinking of also go on.
I was going to say, actually, you did something that I thought was quite genius within your book by putting something that is a constant for children with regards to music.
Oh yeah, so I actually wrote my book. I tend to write all my books in the summer holidays because then kids can get up to more. But yes, the bits where I reference school, I had a hymn that kind of links in. So one more step along the world we go, and the super miraculous journey of Freddie Yates is a journey. That song's a bit of a journey. I know we sing it in assembly and sing it at the end of year 6, and I had it at the beginning of the boys when they left year 6, then in the middle of the journey, and then at the end in his Gram's funeral. So it kind of mirrored, and it was something that I think that people and adults reading the book all kind of can connect with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who doesn't love a good hymn? A good sing song?
Absolutely. Aditi, what are your thoughts on the theme? And
so I was thinking, Toria, and also I've had a lot of time to put these things into context because I work with teenage boys, which is like a context ripe for exploration of the wise of the world. And I feel like maybe, when you're adolescents and teenagers, it's the first time in your life that you experience the highs and lows of emotion and remember those. Yeah. And I almost feel like because those are such formative emotional experiences that we carry them throughout our lives. So every time you want to relate to your first high and your first low, because that's the first memory that you have of them, we get drawn back to those experiences, don't we? Because they're so vividly etched in like our adult consciousness. And then the other thing I was thinking of was that often, at least I find with myself, that we go back to school to right the wrongs. You know, all the narratives in our head of who we wanted to be then, but didn't have the time to be, we go back to it to almost sort of put those things straight. And I think that's why, even as a reader, I keep going back to literature that's based in schools, because I don't know, there's this strange pull. I'm like, maybe this time their story will be what I wanted mine to be.
Yeah, really great points. Simon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely agree. We said randomly we were talking to Richard about the exact same thing, which is I would love to go back to school now and redo my high school completely. And just you take it for granted when you're there, I think. And then when you think back, you spent 5 years with your best friends, learning loads of interesting things, all that sort of stuff. I'd love to go back to school now and do high school again, without a doubt. But then exactly the same thing as well, was just going to say, your first, because you start school obviously so young, your first memories are usually the first thing you did at school, the first time you did sort of things are always to do with your school life. And then the other thing I was thinking as well was the fact that basically it reinvents itself every 5 years, doesn't it? So every so often you're going to do a new story, it's going to be a completely different ethos in a school, a completely different way of thinking. Every 3, 4, 5 years, you could have it goes back to the same sort of subject, but come out with a completely different story because of the experience of what it's like at the time.
You're absolutely right. Now, Richard, you mentioned Tom Brown's School Days. I'm interested with all of you. What books do you instantly think of? And for the people watching as well, put it in the chat, please. What books do you instantly think of when we say the theme school? So, Simon, I'm going to jump to you because I left you last time. He's like, oh God, I wasn't ready.
So book titles, I'm not great, but obviously I'm nursery, so early years is my sort of thing.
Yeah.
I can tell you now, 90% in my experience are all to do with starting school, the first days, all that. You don't tend to have a lot of things in early years that relate to once you're in school and sort of getting on. At that point, you tend to move on to routine and then like the whole day from start to finish. But in terms of school and school only, it tends to be feelings, emotion, starting school, making friends. So we tend to base a lot of our school-based books end up being right at the beginning of the year when children are settling in, and we use those as links and use those as the basis of sort of setting in some rules, what it's like, making them feel comfortable. But definitely from an early years point of view, there's a lot more about your feelings and towards school rather than being at school.
Yeah. Did you have any as a child yourself, Simon, that you remember reading, or that?
Yeah. I think, to be fair, I think I saved all my books. So Jay's my son. He's got them somewhere. He'll have them deep down. But there's a dinosaur book about them starting school, and I cannot remember the title, but I can tell you now, if I saw that front cover, I know it straight away. But it's just one of those things. I just remember the dinosaur having a bit of a tough time, and his mum, and then he ends up going through all the forest or whatever. Sees all these kids playing that he's never met before. Really nervous of them, and then obviously the book follows on, and they end up being the school friends that he goes on to be friends with at school. So he was a bit sort of worried at first, wanted to join in, and then ended up obviously that they were all doing the same things he was. So but if I could find that title, I'd let you know. But he's got it somewhere in the room. I will find it.
Love that. It's interesting, actually. Quite a few people in the chat are saying about the Mallory Towers and St. Clair's books that, I'm sure a number of you have read those, but I'm wondering, Aditi, did you have any others that you recalled as a child what really sort of hit home?
Yeah. So I did, to be fair, have quite an anglicized upbringing, which I think is, the leftover from sort of colonialism. And India is where I grew up, is very geared towards English literature in a lot of ways. So there were works in Hindi that, when we were at school, you'd read about them and you'd read about other children's experiences. But equally, so I'm quite a lover of fantasy. And I think about the unconventional schools that are out there in books. So Percy Jackson, and even Terry Pratchett, and the Unseen University, and all those places that learning still goes on, except the settings are not as conventional as those perhaps of Enid Blyton. And you just get to look at schooling from a completely different perspective, don't you?
Completely, you really do. What about you, Jenny?
Oh, I think mine were all quite American actually, and say, oh, like Judy Blume. Loved Judy Blume books, Blubber, and that was set in school. Sweet Valley High and the Babysitters Club. These are not classics here, but
just saying, Jenny, this is going out on YouTube and it's going to be there as a permanent reminder. So people are going to know.
You've got to read broad. You've got to read broad. So things like Worst Witch, I think I read. Yes. Matilda has got to, rolled up children in school. Yeah, those really. And that was kind of it. We didn't have a great expanse of literature then. There's loads now, but when I was, what we're talking 30 years ago, there wasn't loads to choose from.
No, I think you're right. We're now in the golden age of children's literature. Back then, there was a much, it was a select few, really. So, Richard, you've already mentioned Tom Brown's School Days. Were there any others for you that really resonated, or through the storytelling or anything?
I mean, my mum. I mean, I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and my mum was a big collector antiques, and that was part of her business. But she used to go to jumble sales and charity shops before they were fashionable, and just come home with huge bags of books, And the great thing was you'd get these series of books, and there'd be like 3 missing, so you'd be ahead or you'd be behind. But I never really bothered. So I read, and I was a real reader. So when you ran out of books, there's no internet or anything, so you were stuck. So I read all of the Mallory Towers things, fourth form at Mallory Towers, and people being beastly to each other. But that was no more different. That world was no more different to coming from a Romani community, which I did. That world was no more different to the world I was experiencing at school. That was as alien, to be fair. But, which leads me on really to, we've got Simon here, who's an early years teacher. And it really interests me how teachers are depicted in books. I think,
yes, because that was my next bit. And look, you see, it's like you
right down there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you and Lorraine. So Lorraine's here, and she's put this. Are you ready? And this is what books often and that's exactly what you're going to say, wasn't it, Richard? Books often stereotype.
Absolutely.
There you
Lorraine.
see, you, Lorraine, me, same wavelength.
Yeah, you're
away,
absolutely.
Richard.
I mean, okay, right. This is my soapbox time now. I work with all ages. I work with all ages of kids, and I work with the early years, and it's kind of not too bad for me because I've got this grey hair, and I am actually a granddad in real life, so it doesn't seem so bad. But for a lot of younger male teachers, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you doing it? And it's not reflected in books, and we have Miss Honey, but we don't have a Mr. Honey. And I think, when we look at schools, I go to schools, I've been going for 15 years, maybe more. And I have some anecdotes of some of the people I've met on my travels have been very interesting. That, that's a book in itself. But actually, if you went into school and you reflected what's in school, it would be really overwhelmingly positive. The teachers are nice, the leaders are fantastic. I'm sure there's some not. I don't see them, but the care and attention and the just loveliness of a lot of the teachers, male and female. We get this idea that sometimes it's all about in books is female teachers, but there are a lot of male teachers who are just as caring, just as nurturing. I'd like to hear Simon's any thoughts he's got on that, actually.
I'm really interested.
It's put me on the spot, thanks.
Yeah, of course.
We did tell you there was no format.
Yeah, we did.
I can't think of I mean, you obviously probably come loads at the top of your heads, but I can't think of a teacher character, male teacher character that stands out in the same way as like Miss Honey or as that caring teacher. I'm not even sure when you think about it. I don't even think there's usually a scary male headmaster. I don't know. It's usually they are. I mean, is there a few?
There's the demon headmaster.
Oh, yeah. The worst of the worst.
He's quite scary, but yeah, you're right.
But definitely, yeah, it's just one of those. I think now within schools. I mean, there's 8 of us staff members in early years. I'm the only male. but within the school, there's a lot of male staff, which I think it's definitely turning over. I once went training about 4 years ago, and we looked. It was in the hall or whatever, looking at the staff tree, and I think there was in the whole entire school there was one teacher who was in year 6, which tends to be the stereotype. The males in year 6 to deal with all the kids. But obviously, I'm speaking with Richard, and the way I've always done early years. I started in reception, and then I've just been a nurse for the last 3 years, sort of thing. So early years is where I've been. But even I, myself, I think, what do I do when I'm 40 or 50? Can I do it? Because at that point, I stereotype myself. Do I want to be a 50-year-old working in early years and sort of thing like that? But then,
you do.
Yeah. Well, this is it. I go in every day and I smile, and I leave and I smile. The kids come in and they smile, and I've had the best day ever. So, I enjoy it. I love it. So actually, I wouldn't. Other people in the stereotypes. I mean, I get it from my friends all the time. Like they've all got kids, so they know it's a joke and everything to them. But obviously, as soon as I say, "Oh, what class are you in this year?" Nursery, go, "Oh, so you're just playing with the kids," and that's basically the first joke that everyone ever says. But obviously, we all know, and being in there, it's definitely hit home more that if you can get a good base for those kids, even if it doesn't have to be a male role model or anything, it's getting a base for, if you can get them nursery ready for reception ready, and push them all the way through the school, and you're giving them that massive start. It's hugely important, more than I would have emphasis that I would have put on it when I first started the job. But yeah, you do realise how important it, and especially it tends to be the forgotten sort of area. There's a lot of key stages that sort of get a lot of attention. But within our school, it's been nice that everyone's on literally an equal playing field. We're all as important as each other, and it's nice to feel that. But yeah, definitely, it's a massive thing to get more males into early years. We have a lot of teachers that come in and visit and love it, but then the first thing they say is, "I couldn't do that all day." I think you get so, and I said the same thing. I can't believe if ever I went to year 6, God knows what would happen. But I think you do end up pigeonholing yourself as well. You think you can't do it, and actually you're perfect. You're more than capable. But I think it'd be definitely nice to see more people come in into early years for more than a couple of hours for PPA.
Absolutely. And Aditi, you're all about smashing stereotypes with science, school leader, everything else. So what do you feel about teachers being stereotyped within books?
Just as Simon, you were talking as well, I was just wondering, and Jenny, you might have more perspective on this than I do, but when we went to school, how as a child, your teachers are very sort of two-dimensional, aren't they? They're always the person at the front of the room, and you don't really know the people behind the facade. And then I wonder if it's those adults who then wrote the books. So unless you were a teacher writing about teachers, would you ever portray characters that were more than two-dimensional, because you never knew your teachers in that way?
Yeah, I know. And I think that's changed, hasn't it? I think teachers give more to their kids, more of themselves these days. And I think you're so right about that, because you read some of these things and it is like the stern teacher, ripped up there. I can't bear it. I hate reading it because I've never seen that happen in a classroom. You just wouldn't. Can you imagine? They'd be gone. Teachers cannot behave like that.
Absolutely.
Everyone I know is lovely. You get the odd one who's a bit bored or tired, but there is never a ferocious teacher. Like you do know how to discipline, but you can tell that it's with heart, right? Like schools. You wouldn't last, because we all talk to each other. We can hear in the classrooms as people doing walks all the time. You are watched. That wouldn't happen. And I think maybe people are writing back, right, about the teachers they had 20 years ago. And some of the problems that you hear coming out, you think, well, I don't think those are current problems now. They're relevant to maybe you. Do you know what? Because I think I've read a book recently, and I think she wrote the most loveliest male teacher called Mr. Osho, and it's Helen Rutter's book called The Boy Who Made Everyone Laugh, and it's about a boy with a stammer, and it's similar to Wonder, and it's got jokes in it, but it's actually really moving, and the character, he is such a good, it's like how I see teachers. He looks after the kids. There's a bully, he gets them together, he finds their, you know, how they can help each other, and it doesn't always work out, but he's supportive, and I think he's such a rounded character. It's like he leaps off the page as like a teacher that you would know at your school, and you think, I love him. I felt like she did that really, really well. So
there is that stereotype, isn't there, of either it's the horrible teacher or it's the hero teacher. Who, has taken these children from absolute terrible to and they're a hero, and you can just hear the Hollywood music behind it, but a lot of modern teachers, current teachers are real, as you said there, Jenny, they're real people, and they come across as, but they care. Vast majority of teachers, they care. They really do care for their kids. So they are multidimensional. I mean, one of the characters that I created for school, actually, I did create, and I'll tell you about it when I see you, Simon. A character in nursery, in reception, actually, called Mr. Bear, and I didn't even know you then because we've only known each other a few months. Who does have a big beard and long hair. So that was sort of like life imitating art to come, or the other way around. There is this stereotyping stuff that goes on, isn't there, with teachers? And it would be nice, because I think we also want to, in stories, I want to create the teachers that I want to see. So I probably take the brilliant ones and maybe, Frankenstein them and shove a few of them together. I had this character who was a head teacher who had purple hair and played rock music at assemblies on a guitar, because she used to be in a rock group, and that'll happen. I can guarantee it. I will go to a school and there'll be a woman there with purple hair and she'll be playing electric guitar, heavy metal, and the kids will just love it. So I think that will happen. We had this discussion a few weeks ago about teachers with tattoos. And, that to me is fantastic. I don't have any tattoos. My daughter has loads and loads of them. She's not 7 or 8, by the way. She's like 37. I'm not that liberal of a dad. But I just think tattoos are cool. I don't have any personally, but I think they're really cool, and it's nice to see that on teachers. It's nice to see teachers reflecting society in general, I think.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna Rich Simpson has done some recommendations for us, as he does, but it was really interesting, and I know Rich won't mind me sort of sharing this, but we had this conversation about recommending children's books with links to stories, because actually it was really, really tricky. And we're gonna go now with his first sort of recommendations. I'm gonna add him to the stream. He's gonna knock all of us out, and hopefully you'll be able to hear him. So, have I put him in? Yes. Remove all of us.
To do with school.
Can you hear him okay?
Now, my first recommendation has to be
Matilda.
One of my favourite books growing up. One of my daughter's favourite books, a household favourite. Love the musical, love this book. I love the picture book that Tim Minchin has done that goes along with one of the songs from the musical. So all in all, just a classic book. So first recommendation is a classic. I'm sure you've all heard of it, but Matilda. My other recommendations tonight are going to be some different books. And I've looked at schools rather than all books set in schools, books with maybe just schools that feature in them in some way or another, and some new releases as well. So the first one I've got here is Wolfie, Stage Fright by Lindsay Sedgwick, an Irish author. I was very lucky to be sent a copy of this book by Little Island Publishing. There's a second book just about to be released. It's going to be a series of books about this character. And Wolfie is a bit like a puppy. He appears as almost a pet to a girl called Libby, who doesn't have the easiest of lives. She's got the stereotype evil stepmother. She's got a horrible big brother, and Wolfie's sort of her protector. And Wolfie leads her to do things that she wouldn't normally do. So he helps her with a bit of confidence. And this whole book's around the idea of Libby having to be brave enough to take centre stage in a school production. Unfortunately for her, it was supposed to be her big brother or her stepbrother that got the main part. So when she gets in, instead, all sorts of trouble, jealousy ensues, and it's up to Wolfie to sort of help her through that. Wolfie's a really funny character. There's lots of real comedy in this book. He gets bigger or smaller. He lives in her pocket. He appears at and during lessons. He eats smelly socks, which is quite disgusting, but which my children really enjoyed as part of the book. But just a really, really fun, I'd say sort of year 3, 4 book. Really, really nice, funny book to read and share as well. Good for another book for younger readers this time, rather than my older book. This one's called Pests, and this is about a school for mice and other pests that would live in houses. And I really like the sort of novel idea of that it's not children in school. It's a school in the basement of a block of flats, and the mice and the cockroaches and the bats get together to learn how to be pests, and they steal food and they upset the inhabitants. And it's again a really, really sort of funny book. If you like jokes about poo and jokes about sort of all those disgusting things that children find funny in these books, there's lots of that. Lots of sneaking around, trying to hide from the people in the flats that want to catch them, and just a really novel idea. But I quite like the idea of a school for pests, so I like that one. My next one is a bit of a sad one, and this is Captain Rosalie by Timothy Deform Bell, and it's a very short book. Lots of beautiful illustrations in this as well from Isabelle Arsenault. And so, you know, there are some pages, it's more like a cross between a picture book and a story, this one. But it's about a little girl, and the little girl is Rosalie, and she's 5, and her dad is off at war. It's set in the war, and Rosalie, at the start of the book, we find out that she's on a secret mission. And so she sits at the back of the classroom, and the other children look after her, and the teacher looks after her. And there's a lot of sort of not quite sure of what's going on in the book until we find out that she's on this secret mission that she mentions the whole way through. And it turns out that her secret mission is that she wants to learn to be able to read. And the reason she wants to be able to learn to read is that so she can read the letters that her father has been sending home to her mum. It's a very moving book, very touching book, beautifully written, lots and lots of feeling in it, lots and lots of sentiment in it. It's sad. I'm warning you, the ending and the letter that she ends up being able to read is sad, but there's also some hope at the end of it as well. And you can see the picture there where Rosalie's mum is sitting with her, and she's got the parcel of letters to read at the end there. So those are my first selections of books. Just to show you, it's not all sad. She does get her dad's medal at the end, and there is a happy ending. So I don't really want to leave on such a sad note. All really, really good books, and those are my first recommendations. I'll be back with some more in a bit.
Right, thank you so much to Rich for that. I just need to get rid of them, actually. There we go. And just in case you are worrying with paper and pen and you're like madly writing them all down, Hazel Pinner is our Padlet person, basically. We have a Padlet that is attached to the Tiny Voice book salon, and we'll share that alongside the YouTube video. And on there, we put all of the recommendations. So thank you, Hazel. You're a little star, because she updates it. Basically, as we talk and as Rich recommends, she adds to it. So thank you, Hazel. Right, bringing everyone back in.
Hello. He stays
Hey.
late, doesn't he?
Oh, Rich knows so many books, but he's clearly done his homework since I chatted to him, because I think that's the thing. I mean, there are so many books out there, but you do have to sort of rack your brains and think. I'm dying to read the one about, was it mice or rats?
Pests. Oh, it's really good. Yeah,
I haven't read that one.
My little boy's got that one, because we read Diary of a Pig, which is hilarious, and Emma Stamp does beautiful. They're just brilliant comical drawings, and it's a really nice book. Really nice book. I love all hers. But do you know, when I was watching that, I noticed, like, with Wolfie has the ending like of this sort of stage, and I was looking at the books that I thought about set in school, and so many of the big climaxes are set like at a school show. Like that Helen, because it's a nice to have a big spectacle, isn't it? That Helen Rutter one, he does a comedy show at the end. And actually, I don't know if you've heard of this one, Laughter is the Best Medicine by Christine Hamill. So I love this book. It's about a kid who wants to be a stand-up comedian, based in school again, but his mum's suffering from breast cancer. So you can see how what's happening at home, a bit like Patrick Ness does with Monster Calls. There's something happening at home, and you see how it affects at school. But he wants to be a stand-up comedian, and then he loves Harry Hill, and at the end he has this big, that is like a funny make you cry book as well. And then Sam Copeland, Charlie Changed into a Chicken, that first one, all aiming for the play Mr. Potato in the school play, or Sad Potato 2. But it just seems like often you get those books, don't you, where it's either like an awards ceremony where it all comes together at the end of school, or a play or a show or something. But I was thinking that Wolfie was good, didn't it?
You're absolutely right. And Rich also has to choose. He always has to throw in a book that's going to make you absolutely howl. You know, and that Captain Rosalie did look like it's going to make me cry somewhat.
That made me sad, because when he said she wants to read her mum's letters, I was gone. Right, I can't read that one. Not in front of a class.
He likes his misery, I think, Rich. He just seems to
he does like a bit of misery. It's got to be said. You know, he does pick them. Now, Lorraine's been very useful tonight, it's got to be said, because I really like this question that she's asked. So I'm going to throw it out there to you. Are teachers prime targets for the bad guys because they are figures representing authority? Who wants to have a go at that question?
I think in the old days they were really authoritarian. I mean, I can remember. You know, I went to lots of different schools, not because I was a bad kid and got chucked out, and my family just moved around a lot.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the old schools were you know, run by teachers who had been teachers probably in the 30s before the war, and that they were really authoritarian. I mean, I remember going to one school, and if you wanted to use, you know, the school toilets for anything other than, you know, number one, he kept the toilet roll in his desk, right? And you had to go and ask for it, you know, and there was never any talking. It was complete silence. Kids moved around, you know, and you didn't have PE in those days. It was called PT, which was physical training. Seriously, because they were getting ready for another war. You know, that's what you know. So I think school was run on those lines, and hence, you know, bells ringing to signify playtimes and stuff like that. It's very much like a factory, and getting you used to factory work. So yeah, I think they were fair game, because they did represent, you know, and everybody knows a kid who has dawdled trying to put on time with something because they didn't want to do that, or so I think there is that sort of that game, isn't there, you know, of trying to outsmart the teacher.
Aditi, as head of school, I mean, what's your opinion?
I think there's truth to this. I'm sure that parents up and down the land, of teenagers might find an element of identification in this as well. That the minute that it becomes your responsibility to set boundaries, somebody is not going to like them. And you've got to bear the brunt of being the unpopular person, don't you? Like, one of the things that they tell you is you've got to get used to being unpopular in favor of doing what's right. But then if you're on the other side of them, where you're being told to do what's right, but that's not your interpretation of it, the person in front of you immediately, again, that polar thing happens, isn't it? You immediately become the bad guy, because we just don't know how to deal with gray areas. And so I think there is a lot of truth to the statement that the minute you set boundaries, you are bound to fall into bad guy category.
Yeah. What do you think, Simon?
Well, I suppose in this day and age, the stereotypical teacher isn't a stereotypical teacher, is it? So when it comes to when we do our rules and boundaries, it's all about being a good person and a good friend. So instead of it being, because obviously the last thing you want to do is just say no. It's all positive language, isn't it? We don't use don't, we don't use do not. We use kind hands, we use kind words. We try and flip it, and partly for our sake, so that we don't turn out to be the bad guys. Like, I can guarantee you now, my 4 rules, I could definitely say it you could definitely have them very sort of formal, but you wouldn't get anything out of the kids. The kids sort of, for our children, it's about them being sort of nicer children and nicer people. And then using those sort of things in school, being friendly, being kind. So hopefully, the way that we've given the rules out, we use it through discussion and we talk to them. Everything's done through talk. It's a two-way street. It's all about communication. Because again, if my whole thinking is, if the children that you're making the rules for, or you're sort of doing the boundaries for, don't agree with those boundaries, you're going to get pushback straight away. It's nice to have you definitely need to have those boundaries and do it with the children, so they're engaged in it. They made an effort. They come with those ideas. They're part of the solution, sort of thing. So they take on a role in that as well. But yeah, I would definitely say that the way we do things is not just to make it easier for us, but obviously it's more of a class situation rather than me giving the rules out these days. I'm not sure if that's different higher up in school, different year groups. Obviously, I'm in early years, so that's where I'm based. But then again, I guess a lot of the rules they follow through school anyway as well. So it's a case of, I guess it's a case of building on some of the rules and then expanding on them. But ours are very basic and very simple, and definitely done in a way so that the children understand them. So hopefully we don't come across as authoritarian, more helpful.
I'm going to be devil's advocate. Jenny, I'm going to ask you a question here. So even if we put questions down in the nicest fashion to children, do you think they might go home to mum and dad and say, oh my goodness, do you know what we have to do? We have to do blah, blah, blah. And, actually our mum and dad's the one writing the book. And therefore, is that why teachers are seen as authoritarian? See, that's off you go.
The reason that writers are writing teachers as bad people is because if you're setting a book in school, you need an antagonist to make it interesting. And it's the same as where you have a book, you put a book in, because you never, bullying, thank goodness in the schools, it's stamped on, it's dealt with. There's always, there's, I'm not saying there's no bullies, but it's, when you read in children's books, they're all over the place. But it's because you need that. You need somebody. You need to put something in to stop your main character achieving what they want to achieve. Otherwise, it's a lovely, lovely book, which it would be if you wrote in our schools, wouldn't it? I'd love to write a book in your classroom, but there'd be nothing going on apart from happy children, Simon. Like, no one wants to read that. I need to make you into a demon. Or, it's what Richard was saying about making an interesting teacher with purple hair. That's what people want to read. So we're not really reflecting what's true. Maybe we're thinking, where's the bad guy coming from? Oh, it's a teacher. It's an easy place to go, isn't it? Because there aren't any other real adults in the school, apart from an office lady, but no one would be brave enough to make the office staff bad.
We need those supplies.
No, or the canteen.
One of my very good friends, Peter, who's a teacher, he created this story, which was far too gory for me, but he used to tell it when we used to be in school in Cambridgeshire. And it was about a cook in the school who, again, wasn't very nice. They're not a very nice cook, which generally they're lovely. And this inspector came round, and he was complaining about her food, apparently. And she sort of kind of killed him and fed him in pie. You know, a little bit Sweeney Todd thing going on there, but kids loved it. They absolutely lapped it up. You know, but I think, you know, school for me is, and I don't think we get this, and maybe we should do all together. We should write this. But school is hilarious. I have never been to a funnier place. You know, the things the kids say. You know, and staff rooms are bizarrely wonderful. You know, people don't actually check themselves, because teachers like to write notes for, you know, to write a note. They write a note to write a note. And the notes on the fridge I've seen, you know, who's taken, I saw one, it was like a ransom note almost. Who's taken this pizza? And there was a photograph of a frozen pizza. Right? And people were taking it seriously. They were walking up to the fridge and going, oh, you know, as if, yeah, I've got someone in mind, but, you know, for legal reasons, I can't say it. And this was just the biggest thing. And then cups, you know, mugs, cups. I once saw a sign up in a school in Cambridgeshire, actually. And again, it said, you know, have you seen these cups? Because I think they'd had an evening event or something. It was a primary school, and you know, they must have left the mugs somewhere. But this was a massive thing in the school, especially in the staff room. There was about maybe 8 or 9 mugs that had gone missing, and it was so. I think schools are hilarious, you know, and just so funny.
I know that we have a sort of biscuit gate thing. So, you know, it's actually, we've got a very large staff. So actually it's got to be very, very divvied out who gets biscuits when. And you can't like take loads of biscuits. Otherwise you won't leave biscuits for other people. I think you're absolutely right. What about you, Aditi? What do you think about the idea of writing a more comical, you know, someone writing a more comical reflection on schools?
I think, just like Richard said, I think schools are just ripe for that sort of thing. Like if you got an author and you let them loose in an everyday school, and I can promise you, I work in a special school and it is material for years. Like every day, there's enough for a book. You know, just the things that come out of the children's mouths, then the staff's reaction to all of it, and the story. You could weave stories for days.
It's where I get all my ideas from. All the characters, everything comes from the kids.
It is.
I love the way that kids make connections as well. You know, I was working at a school where there was a Mrs. O'Neill, right? So the kids could not. It was pointless. I was there for, you know, I was there for 12 months. You know, going every sort of month as a writer in residence, and it was pointless trying to explain to them that Mrs. O'Neill wasn't my Mrs. O'Neill, and this Mr. O'Neill wasn't her Mr. O'Neill. They just could not get past that. It was just that, you know, and it was just, even the year 4s and year 5s would come up in conversation. Oh, you know, Mrs. O'Neill says she's going to the Lake District for the weekend. Are you going to enjoy it as well? You know, I'm not going to the Lake District. That's not, and it was just pointless in the eyes. Yeah, it'll be nice, you know, as long as it doesn't rain. And it was just hilarious. I just love it.
I find a lot of the stuff from my book from when you're teaching kids RE or something about space, something where their mind goes. And there's a bit in Freddie Yates where they're talking about Jesus being a shepherd and sheep, and didn't he work with wood? And then no, he looked after leopards. And this was a genuine conversation that I heard in my class, thinking I'm Ofsted are going to be very pleased with me, but I put it in a book. And like the miracle thing came from a year 5 RE lesson when we were talking about miracles and the feeding of the 5,000 different ones. Did they experience a miracle? And one kid's like, yeah, I know a miracle. I was like, oh gosh, tell us. And he was like, zips. And I was like, what? He was like, zips. He's like, Nobody knows how they work. I was like, oh, I think
Dead right.
and then I thought it was brilliant.
Genius.
I loved it. Every morning he goes, zip, hallelujah, you know. And
Exactly.
I can never stop teaching because I'm just watching them all the time thinking, right, what should we do today? Let's talk about what do you guys think about space? Because they just
no, you're right. Yeah, you are right. It is absolutely. It's those moments. Simon, you must have a lot of moments in early years.
Oh my God.
It must just be like, whoa.
It's the best thing. Like, obviously, in early years, you can plan in the moment, can't you? So I can do a whole week's worth of planning or a whole term's worth. Come in on a Tuesday. Someone said something about space. Something about a spaceship. They've made a hell, and then all of a sudden you've gone off on one, and you spend the rest of the next 2 weeks doing astronauts and space everything because it comes from them. Yeah. And the best work is the stuff they want to do, isn't it? So, but I get my favorite thing is observations. Obviously, we all about observations instead of sort of the assessment, and that's the best thing because sometimes you just sit and watch it, and you can get your observation hour in, and I love it. So I'll just spend an hour walking around. I try not to let them see me because as soon as they see me, they start talking. But you just eavesdrop on them, and the conversations. Some of them are. They're talking about doing whatever they're cooking, and they're having a proper husband and wife conversation. You don't get that. Pull the baby out, go do this. The baby on the floor, they're getting told off by the child. It's amazing. Yeah, the best stuff I find is almost the stuff they just do. You don't see they don't see you. You're just sort of like sneaking around and like watching them do their imagination. They're just their own role play. And obviously at that point you can sort of delve in and get some questions. But yeah, I spent a long time being told off for my observations because they were massive. Because all I would do is write down everything they said, and you'd end up having like this whole document, which I found amazing. But obviously,
send them to me.
Well, I'm just actually going back to the whole book subject.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No. Because I think we've gone slightly off on a tangent, but that's fine. Actually, how easy, and I'm putting this to Richard and Jenny, how easy is it then to capture those sort of gems that you've each talked about? Is it hard to capture that in a book? And is that why we're not reading it? Well,
I wrote one called Maisie Poole Rules the School, where the government had, and it'll happen. I'm sorry about this, but they're about 4 years ago, but it'll happen. Two men in the government decide that wouldn't it be good to get a child's perspective of school? So they choose a school, and they find the youngest kid in the school, and they're going to swap her with the head teacher for a week, just to see, get that child's perspective. So that was my way of getting into it. And the head teacher is not very nice, actually, to be honest. There's a stereotype for you, but she doesn't like kids very much. But there's a lovely male teacher and a lovely female teacher, and a very harassed secretary, who I don't think the people who work on the front desk in schools or in the office, I don't think we give them enough credit for what they do, because they're amazing. So it is. I think it is difficult. That's why I actually most of the time like storytelling, because when you're working with kids, whether it's the younger ones or the older ones, you really can just let it go, and you can incorporate some of the things they've said and make it part of. I had a conversation with a 5-year-old last week who I just met for the first time at the reception of a school, walking along that, and she's the most amazing talker, this kid. She's just wonderful, like some kind of old lady trapped in a reception kid's body. And she was just like, yeah, well, she's giving me all the local gossip, She goes, yeah. And like, first of all, she said, why are you here? Who are you? And I explained who I was and why I was there, like, okay. And then we were walking. And I said, well, shall we walk and talk to your class? She said, yeah, okay. She says, why are you doing that? I said, well, because Corona. Oh yeah. Well, yeah. My auntie's had coronavirus, and we all had to stay in the house for 10 days. And then she was just going on about. She knew everything about the area, local history, you name it. She knew it, and it was just wonderful. So it is hard to capture, I think, that essence of that, because it is wonderful and spontaneous, and children are just the most wonderful things on the planet. And the younger they are sometimes, I know that with the bigger ones you can really let go. In secondary school we have amazing fun, But I think with those 5 and 6-year-olds, they're just, oh gosh, they're so sparky. You know, they're amazing.
Well, 'cause
They're,
you can't
they're
predict
definitely fitted with Duracell batteries, aren't they?
Do you know who I think is a just so good at doing it though? Is Frank Cottrell Boyce. So he has
Yes.
his characters, his children characters. I've just read his new one that's coming out in May, Noah's Gold, and it's about a school trip where they end up stranded on Ireland, and it's just hilarious. And he's written one of my favourite school scenes in Cosmic, where there's a boy called Liam who is like 6 feet tall, and he's only like 10. But he turns up, and the school mistake him for the new teacher, and they take him into the staff room, and he's kind of going along with it, thinking, "Wow, this is a lovely school." You know, they're trying to get me really into. And then they lead him onto assembly, and he ends up causing this mass walkout. And you know, and it's so funny because the teachers, what they're doing, are just so spot on. I properly makes me laugh. But his characters, they feel really like he's got it, the way they speak and everything is really, really good. So I think it is hard to do, and I think that Richard and I have an advantage of have been in schools for so long and around kids and experienced so many kids that hopefully that comes across when we write them. So because it's an honor to be in the classroom, and then to be able to put that in a book, it feels like a responsibility to get it right when you're sort of representing the children. And like that's the thing that I worry about like the most, is getting the kids' characters right.
Because it makes complete sense. And on that note, we're going to go to another Rich Recommends. And then after that, we've got a final question, again from Lorraine. She's been really useful, actually, because I haven't had to use my questions, because her questions are much better. It's got to be said.
Yeah, but you should join us next time, Lorraine.
Right, I'm going to add Rich to stream. Have I added him? Yes, I have. Can take all of you out, and hopefully he'll start speaking.
On books that have a theme of schools in them. So the next set of books starts off with a book by a teacher who should know what school's all about, really, shouldn't he? So James Haddle, you might know him on Twitter. He is on Twitter, so follow him if you want to find out more. This is his debut book, came out last year, called The Last Child's Quest, about an adopted girl who goes to live with her new family. And it's a brilliant mix of fantasy and folklore. They uncover a treasure and they have to try and work out what it is. And there's lots of links to sort of local myth and lore in there as well. And the link to school in this one is that when she goes to live, the girl called Tia, when she goes to live with her new family, she starts at a new school. And this new school sounds brilliant. So the reason I'm including this book is because I like the idea of this school. The school is called Stormhaven Castle School of Exploration and Discovery, and it's set in an old castle, and they've got a brilliant teacher who lets the children explore and discover and take on their own projects, and the school's in a castle, and the children just like the idea of it. There's a really funny moment where two of the new children start at this new school, and they've come from a more traditional school, and they start this school, and the comment from one of them is, do you think this is a proper school? I mean, it's a bit different from most schools, innit? Do you think we'll learn everything we need to get a proper education here? Well, I don't know what that says about our education system, that children are worried that a school is not teaching them formally enough. But a really, really good book. It's from a series called Tales of Truth and Treasure, and it's book 1, and there's more adventures to come from Tia, but a really good book, and yeah, an interesting school, one I'd like to work in, I think. The second book is a bit of a classic again. It's called Boy in the Girl's Bathroom by Louis Sachar, who wrote Holes. And this is about a boy called Bradley Chalkers, and Bradley is the bad boy at school. He tells lies, he picks fights with girls, the teachers say he has serious behaviour problems. But something changes, because along comes a teacher, or a counsellor, it's an American book, so a counsellor called Carla. And Carla has a chat with Bradley, and the way that she approaches things and the way she gets him to open up and talk about things changes how he behaves, changes his relationships. It's a beautiful book about friendship, about acceptance. There's themes of bullying in here. Bradley's an interesting character. You feel really sorry for him at times. He goes home and sort of acts out things that have been happening at school with his selection of little toys in his bedroom, which is quite a nice sort of way of him explaining what's going on. And by the end of it, there's some really nice scenes showing the children who treated him badly before sort of starting to accept him because he's changed his ways of behaviour. Just a really nice, touching book full of friendship and school issues, and I think issues that a lot of children who read it will be able to relate to. Friendship and peer issues and things like that. So that's a lovely book as well. Next book is quite a recent one. This has come out, and this is from David Almond, who wrote Skellig. Big fan of his writing, beautiful writer. And this is about a new boy at school, and he's called Brand New Boy, and you can maybe tell by the cover there's something slightly different about this new boy. So this new boy turns up at school, and the other children like him because he's very, very good at things. He's brilliant at football. He loves crisps, but he's slightly strange, and he's watched a lot of the time by someone who's making notes about him from the side of the classroom. And it turns out that George, the new boy, isn't quite what he seems. And I'm not going to spoil it any more than that, because again, this is just a really, really lovely book about fitting in, about acceptance, about somebody who's not quite the same as the other children, but the other children treating them in a really kind and really nice way, with a sort of message of it shouldn't really matter who you are, what you are, if you're nice and if you're kind, and children accepting each other, and I suppose the innocence of children accepting each other for what they are in this one. Has some big questions about sort of artificial intelligence and robots and technology and things like that as well. But just some really nice sort of value-driven stories in there. Last one with a few seconds to go is School for Nobodies, which is another lovely book by Susie Bauer, and this is from Pushkin Press. Some beautiful books come from Pushkin Press. This one's about a girl called Flynn, who's adopted, and she gets packed off to a boarding school full of lots of other sort of misfits and children that don't quite fit in. She doesn't know a lot about her history, but through the course of the book, she finds out more and more. It's quite cryptic as she finds out more and more about her history and about where she's from. And of course, nobody is a nobody, everybody's a somebody. And so this book is about Flynn finding out who she is and what her identity is, and it's funny. It's interesting, beautiful characters, a really, really nice, again, a different type of school, and that's what I've gone for with these recommendations. Hope you like the recommendations, hope you enjoy them. Follow me on Twitter as Rich Read a Lot if you would like to hear some more, because it's more or less all I talk about. Have a nice evening, and I hope your first week at school is going back for all of you as well. Thank you.
Oh, I don't know what's happened there. That's quite exciting. I look very special. Right. He really does know his books, does our Rich, but he's only left us a minute at the end because he does talk about books a lot. So we're going to really quickly answer Lorraine's question, if I can find it. It was basically, oh, come on, Lorraine, where was your question? I've lost it now. We're running out of time. They've all been recommending books very busily in the chat. So it is, yes, here we go. Do children reflect the reality of school life in their own writing, or do they like to exaggerate for effect, or do they play safe to please the teacher? So you're going to answer very simply with reality, exaggerate, or play safe from your experience. Now, I would say my experience would be they tend to play safe, that actually they tend to replicate the books that I don't know. They tend to, I don't know if we must just be really boring actually when I think about what my children write.
I would say there's way too much do it this way muck writing in every school. So it all just comes out, a lovely little burger every time. We use the same books, we use the same systems. Let's have the teacher's personality in there. Every time I see a wonderful piece of writing, it might be sloppy, but there's something in it. It's beautiful because the teacher's said, "Go on, give it a go," and that teacher's sparky as well.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Aditi?
I think they definitely tend to play it safe.
Yeah.
Also because sometimes I do think that, at least for me, the teenagers that we haven't quite found the words to express themselves correctly. Yeah. So whatever's coming out on paper is a version of what they want it to be, but perhaps not as rich as they would like it to be had they had more words to put on it, but definitely safer.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts, Simon? I mean, given that yours are really little, but when they're storytelling in your room,
they will definitely exaggerate. So we're all about making it big and go crazy. So they've also forgotten what you've asked them. By the time they said 3 words, they've forgotten what you were asking them to talk about. So we have a whole thing about we have story scribing, and they are welcome to just tell you whatever they want, and we write it down. And then the idea is they just build on that, and eventually they'll come out with characters. But yeah, definitely exaggeration.
Love that. What about you, Jenny?
2 camps. I have ones who are just like, woo! And then I have ones who they played with their best friends and they had a lovely time and nothing really bad happened or went on because I really like my character and her cat and I don't want anything to happen to them. I just want them to have a lovely time. And I'm like, you do need to kind of make something happen to this kid for it to be an interesting story. And then the ones where you're just like, which I love. So, we're always aiming for that happy medium, right? Like something that makes sense, but is, a bit out there.
Absolutely. I cannot believe that we have run out of time because that's what I find amazing about these chats, that, they are, for everyone watching, they are not structured. It is basically us just chatting and really unpicking a theme. Aditi, Richard, Simon, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me. Hazel, thank you so much for doing the Padlet, which will be attached to the YouTube video, everyone. Rich, thank you so much for the recommendations. Join us again next month, which is Tuesday, the 13th of April, where Sharifa Lee is choosing the theme, and we will let you know that later on in the month, along with our little poster. So thank you, everyone, so much for joining us, and see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.